Well, hey guys, Bart from Bicycle Rider YouTube, and I want to talk about e-bikes. Have you ever brought your e-bike to the bicycle shop and been surprised that they didn't want to work on it? Well, I've got a perspective on that as a former bicycle shop owner, cost accountant, an e-bike lover, but someone who had to try to make a dollar off of repairing those e-bikes, and someone that said yes to that many times and then got burned many times. So I think there's a difference between a customer and someone that loves their new e-bike and is excited about it, and the bike shop owner that has lost money time and time again on that e-bike repair and doesn't want to work on them anymore because they've got to feed their family. And I was in that exact position, and in this video I'd like to talk about that a little bit while I'm taking a night ride on my bike. So the story goes like this. You might have been excited to buy that e-bike and find health, fitness and adventure in your life. And of course, as a bike shop owner, well, I love that too. I want that for you. I want that for everybody. It's one of the reasons I bought a bike shop or invested in a bike shop. And of course, I want to help people with that. Even if you didn't buy that e-bike for me because my bikes were a little too expensive in your mind. So you went and bought your e-bike off of an online company. And then when you show up to the bike shop asking questions about how it works, or what kind of maintenance do I need on it, or even more common, it not working properly. And of course, when you bought that bike off of that online company, you looked at the website and it looked fantastic, and you looked at the reviews, and there are several reviews saying this is the best e-bike on the market, you're gonna love it. And you looked at the customer service promises saying, hey, if you have a problem, we're gonna take care of you from wherever we're at in the world. And you believed them. And all of a sudden, when you have a problem with your bike or a question, and you can't get through to someone on the phone that knows what they're talking about, or even get through at all on the phone, emails take forever to get answered. Well, then you just go into your local bike shop and ask the bike shop owner or the employees about this bike that you bought online that didn't bring any money into the bike shop. But of course, being in the bike shop, we love people with bikes. So, you know, we take our time and we try to be super cool about it and kind of drop what we're doing that's going to make us $1 a repair or a sale or getting organized in the shop to talk to you about your e-bike. And a lot of times, if it's a quick question that we can answer, that we've answered multiple times, we might have answered that question multiple times already that day and put down our work to do it. It happens over and over and over again. I don't know how many times I was way behind in my task in the bike shop, and a customer walks through the door and they're asking about an e-bike question about something that they bought online. If you don't think it's that common, spend a day in your local bike shop and see. Half the people that are walking in are talking about e-bikes, and not about the e-bikes you sell in your shop, because of course they're just too expensive. Now there's a reason why those bikes are a little bit more expensive, because most of the bike shop quality e-bikes in a reputable shop are going to have a Shimano or a Bosch motor, Bros, parts, things we can get parts for, even Bafang. You know, there's a lot of different motors, and that's a whole nother point I'll talk about in another video. There's so many different motors, so many different batteries, so many different controllers, and a lot of that stuff is not made here in America. A lot of that stuff is coming from overseas, and there's no parts for those bikes. So let me get back to my point. As a bike shop owner, I love the invention of the e-bike. Heck, I've got a couple myself. I'm traveling around Europe over the summer, and e-bikes are everywhere. People using them for transportation in the cities where they're too crowded to park. There's bicycle infrastructure going in all over the place because of e-bikes, more people riding. Aged out individuals, and I'm going to be one of those someday too, are now able to get out and ride and be happy and healthy. I love seeing that as a bicycle enthusiast, as a bike shop owner. So don't think I'm anti-e-bike. I'm the opposite. But when you have to make a living off of the e-bikes, it's a whole different story. When you've said yes a bunch of times to an e-bike repair that was, you know, something that was purchased somewhere else other than your store, and you go the extra mile to try to source parts for it, or repair a wiring harness, or replace a bearing that's worn out, you realize that most of the time it's a lost leader. So, you know, if you put your hand on a hot plate over and over again, you kind of realize, like, don't put your hand on that hot plate anymore. And when you lose money on the bicycle repair over and over again, you realize that, well, maybe I just have to start saying no to these e-bike repairs, because even though the customer or your friend might think you're a jerk because you're saying no, well, eventually you got to put peanut butter and jelly on the table for your family. And if you keep losing money on e-bike repairs, you realize that that's not the avenue you should go to. Stick with regular bikes where you can repair those and feel good about it. So you ask, well, why are the e-bikes so hard to repair? And it's complexity. All of a sudden you're dealing with, a lot of times you bought that bike on the on the internet because of price. You know, even though you saw the good reviews, when it came down to it, you got two e-bikes for $1,500, where the one e-bike in my store was, you know, $1,900 to $2,000. So, you know, that price point was really a pretty big positive check in your reason to buy that e-bike from that online store. So when it comes down to the e-bike repair, it gets complicated and expensive for the shop. One, the weight of the e-bikes are 70 to 90 pounds. So you need a bike lift to even put those bikes on the bench so you can work on them. So your mechanics aren't throwing their back out and can't come to work anymore. I know I had a few steps going into my bicycle shop, and just trying to get the e-bikes in and out of the shop. A lot of times people would try to walk them in the shop and they'd fall down on the stairs or bang the door trying to get them in. So I was a guy that went out there and unloaded the bikes and, you know, brought them in the shop. So half the time I would meet people out in the parking lot and try to do it out in the parking lot and kind of break the news to them that it's not the repair that we're going to do for you. And it's not that I have anything against you, or it's not that I don't like you. You know, it has nothing to do with that. It's not a profitable venture for me. And I ended up losing my bike shop, so this really hits home. And I'm not saying e-bikes are the reasons I lost my shop. I'll put a lot of that on the blame of me. As the bicycle shop owner, could have made some different decisions, and I could have said no to those e-bikes a long time ago before I learned my lesson about trying to repair them, because you have a lot of hours into those jobs and you're still working with inferior parts, you know. So when you're working on something in your garage, or your friends helping in your garage, and things don't shift perfectly, or the disc brakes rub a little bit, you can have a little leeway with that. But when you bring it into a bike shop, you expect things to come out working perfect, and if you don't, you bring them back, or you give the bike shop a bad review. Now, when I say inferior parts, it's the truth. There's a lot of inferior parts put on those bikes that are coming out from $600 to $800 to $1,500. And I'm not disregarding $600, $800, or $1,500. I wish I had that in my pocket. But when it comes to buying a whole bike that can do 20 to 28 miles an hour on the streets, or with fat tires, and you're supposed to be able to take them on the trails, believe me, there's a lot of machining, there's a lot of technology that goes into those bikes. And for you to get them, the end user, to your house with shipping and everything for $1,500, they've skimped somewhere. Most of the time they're going to skimp on the components because they want the specs to look good for you. They want you to have a 750 watt motor and a colored controller and a 630 watt hour battery, all the specs, you know. And then you just look at the derailleur and say, well, shoot, it's got a 9-speed Shimano derailleur or something like that. It's a whole different quality of derailleur. And for one, a Sarah derailleur made by Shimano is a pretty good derailleur on a hybrid bike, but you put 750 watts through that derailleur and there's problems. So time and time again in the bike shop we saw this, and that's why we had to start really being a lot more careful about what we're bringing in for repair. For one, you heard me talk about insurance. If you watched my last video, why you just can't have your friends work in the bike shop that aren't on the books as insurance. Well, when you go to your insurance company and say you want to start repairing e-bikes, believe me, there's a pretty big discussion to be had there, and your insurance rates are going up. And when your insurance rates go up, that means you should be bringing more money on the repair side to make up for that. But when you're losing money on the e-bike repair job and your insurance goes up, and your regular bikes are getting backed up with repair because your mechanics are scratching their heads at how to fix these things or waiting on parts, it turns into a lose-lose situation. So those of you that are thinking about buying a new e-bike, you know, be careful what you buy. Go to your local reputable bike shop and buy what they have. You might pay a little bit more. Ask them about their policy. Like most bike shops will fix what they sell, and that's a big difference than not being able to get a part for something you bought online and then you've got a $1,500 boat anchor, or you're hitting up your buddy that's an electrician and asking him if he could work on your bike. And most of the time an electrician, when they get done with work, they don't want to go work on something with a big question mark. So, you know, that brings up another point with fixing e-bikes. You know, there's a electrical component to it, so you have to have a mechanic that knows how to use a voltmeter and understand ohms and wiring harnesses. And most of the time, if a bike mechanic knows all that, he's probably going to go be an electrician and make a whole lot more money. So when your bike shop owner or employee says they can't work on your e-bike, don't get mad at them. They're just trying to put food on the table. And of course it can sound snarky, you know. Different shops have different attitudes, and that's what makes the world go around. So if you're a bike shop owner, a bike shop employee, and you can't work on someone's e-bike for good reason, and I understand those reasons, believe me, they hit home with me, and it's hard, guys. The consumers out there realize that we have to answer the same, bike shop professionals have to answer the same question over and over and over again every day. When I got into the bicycle business, I wasn't expecting to have to work on e-bikes or talk about e-bikes all day long. Like I said, I like e-bikes, but I got into the bicycle business to help people with bicycles, you know, and people understand the value of a bicycle most of the time. But when you spend all day long talking about e-bikes and having to say the same thing over and over to people, that, you know, I can't work on your e-bike because the insurance costs too much. I mean, a customer doesn't want to hear that. I get a lot of comments on my YouTube channel about stuff like that. Well, you know, you can make a lot of money working on e-bikes if you just did this and if you just did that. Believe me, we tried a lot of things until I didn't have any more money to keep going. So it's a lot easy for someone to say you should have, or you could have, or I could turn that business around. But more and more bike shops that have said yes to e-bikes, that looked at that like, hey, could be a great revenue stream. The bicycle business is hurting and there's a lot of e-bike business, but when you get into the nuts and bolts and time of it, and the hassle and their reputation, of it, it turns into a lost leader. So just realize when you buy that e-bike off an online company and their customer support is over the telephone or through a package in the mail with an instruction manual, here you burnt out the controller, here's another controller, you try to hook it up. We've got more people that showed up to the bike shop with these little packages of parts that they wanted us to put on. And we tried. Sometimes we're successful, but most of the time we weren't. Or when that part goes bad again, it's coming back to my shop instead of people realizing, this was bought somewhere else. This was bought online. Someone made money off of that sale, not us, and the repair's not making us any money either. So I used to do the Biloxi Friday Fun Ride quite a bit, and we said, it was one of those rides where people say, can we bring our e-bike? And I'm like, absolutely. You know how many times I was helping people put chains back on an e-bike or fiddling with a throttle that wasn't working or something. Like on Friday, I want to go ride with my customers, not work on cheap e-bikes. So I can say cheap e-bikes because I am a professional bicycle mechanic. I'm someone who knows the inside of bicycle retail. I'm someone that saw the invoices. Like I saw the parts that we had to buy. There's no part suppliers. So you have to buy parts, specific parts that don't mark those parts down for the dealer. You can buy the same part as a customer as I pay as a dealer, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be wholesale parts. I mark up the part a little bit, and to make a little money off the part. And that's business. That's not, that's not trying to rip anybody off or price gouge anybody. That's just business. And the bicycle shop and the bicycle industry is a business. I know it well because that business broke me. It broke my heart too because I loved owning a bike shop, but financially I'm living in this financial destruction right now. And I'm not saying it wasn't worth it, and I don't want this video to be about that, but believe me, I know what I'm talking about when I say a bike shop owner even knows more than the bike shop mechanics. As far as, I shielded my mechanics and my employees from a lot of the things that were happening in the bike shop as far as how much parts cost and, breaking down each job. And I did that as a cost accountant. I found out just how much money we were losing doing some of these repairs. And you can chalk up losing money on a repair now and then as a learning proposition, but when it happens over and over and over again every week, and then you look at the month and you look at the year and you break it down and you see a big loss when it came to e-bike repair, you think about that when you're trying to drop your e-bike off at your local bike shop, and the bike shop owner or the employee has been told not to bring those bikes in. We're not being jerks. We're just trying to keep the bicycle industry a little bit profitable. And even though there's a big surge in e-bikes and people say, man, if you could just learn how to fix these things, but it's a lot of time and effort into learning that for it not to be profitable. Most people I know that have been in it, and of course we've had a couple mobile bike mechanics come through the area that I had my bike shop in, and to accept these jobs that we were turning down. They didn't stick around either. I think once they learned the insurance cost of it and also reputation, if we don't fix your e-bike correctly because of the bad quality in parts, and you get that bike back and you ride it for a couple of weeks and the bottom bracket starts making noise again, or the wheel bearing doesn't have a good seal and dries out, once I've touched it, the whole problem is mine now. Well, I brought that bike by Bart's Bicycle Shop a month ago. Now it's out of tune again. They use cheap cables, cheap brakes, a lot of, when you have a 90-pound bike on cable operated disc brakes that are unbranded, it's not my fault that the cable stretches quickly or the brake pads wear out quickly, or You know, you get 28 miles an hour, you jam on the brakes and it warps the rotor, then the brakes start making noise because it's a cheap rotor. You know, hydraulic brakes, just know, I mean, I had 13, 14 sets of fittings for these different hydraulic brakes. And a lot of them are unbranded. You see on my bike, it says Shimano right there. I know what fitting that is. On your e-bike that doesn't have a brand, I don't know what fitting it is, and it's a very fine aluminum thread. If I put the wrong fitting in there because it's not marked, so you just have to guess and cross thread that thing, well then your brake's hooked to your motor cutoff switch. Your motor cutoff switch is a preparatory part. Gosh, my stumbling my words. I think it's like 11 o'clock at night and I'm out here riding my bike. But next thing you know, you've got to buy a whole brake system for a customer for what was supposed to be just a brake bleed. So, like I said, I think e-bikes are changing the world in a good way. But be careful what you're buying, and if you do need to go buy your bike shop and they turn you down for work, just understand it's not personal. It's because we've been burned too many times with e-bike repair, and maybe there's some shops that are figuring just specializing in just that. I didn't want to specialize in just e-bike repair. I love bicycles. I don't know. Stick around for my next video. I'm going to talk about Walmart bikes and big box store bikes next. So anyway, Bart with Bicycle Rider YouTube. If you like what we do, please send me some comments on this stuff. I love to hear the comments, even when you guys don't agree with me. But you know, when you're the owner and you, like I said, I see the bottom line on each job and you break it down. And when you look at the history of the year or two of working on e-bikes, and all of a sudden that revenue's down, there's a reason, there's a pattern there. It's numbers, you know, it's not personal. So think about that when you're purchasing an e-bike. Make sure to buy something of quality, something that you can get parts for. Don't just call the customer service line, the sales line, because they'll answer that phone. Try the warranty line and see if they answer the phone, or see what kind of information they give you. So I'm going to talk a lot more about this subject. I'm going to try to shut this video down so I can get home and have a bowl of ice cream and get some sleep tonight. So Bart from Bicycle Rider YouTube, out riding my bike at night, talking about e-bikes. And make sure you send me some comments on this one. I'm curious to see other people's view on this, and believe me, it hits home when you can't put peanut butter and jelly on your family's plates anymore. So I love e-bikes. I love to see people out there enjoying their e-bikes, but I just didn't want to work on them anymore because I couldn't afford to. Bart from Bicycle Rider YouTube, real story on e-bike repair from a former bike shop employee.